If you would like to grow in your faith in Jesus Christ and receive all that God has for you by living in His will, then that's in large part what this series is about. This is a part of a series called The Disciple, journeying through what it means to follow Christ and all that entails. And if you pay attention to the playlist so it's on our channel under the playlist, The Disciple. There are categories with each, and they're put in that category order. Now, one of the categories that I'm opening up in this video is the category of church history. Now, people don't really understand a lot of times the impact of church history, but what church history does is it helps us to know how we got here, why the church is the way it is now, and why it's operating the way it operates, and why it believes what it believes. And that will help us socially know how to navigate our relationships within the church. It'll also help us to evaluate things that may be evolved over time that aren't necessarily biblical, or maybe they are. And by having understanding of church history and maybe even how to move forward and how to have impact on others, that'll be the effect of church history. Now, the challenge with church history is all it really is, because all it takes to be someone who impacts Christianity is just simply claim, I'm a Christian. Someone claims I'm a Christian, and all of a sudden they're in the picture. Now, not all people are influential, and that's a big part of it. But just simply saying I'm a Christian thrusts the person into it. A group saying they're a Christian group thrusts them into the whole mix. And there's things happening simultaneously, separate from one another, and this end of the planet and that end of the planet, and things are running in contact with each other and not having contact with each other. And so it's really difficult to follow. History in general has that kind of nature to it. It's really difficult to follow, to organize it. As you might know just by living your own life, life isn't always ordered and structured. It just kind of happens. And understanding history is a very challenging endeavor for that reason. And so this first lesson in church history is really to just give an overarching view of what we're looking for and what we're observing and what it's saying to us. And that will guide us through what things to highlight and what things to examine and evaluate. So first to consider is that in large part what's happening in the history of the church is a debate. And the debate is centered, and it's happening whether it's verbally happening or it's happening in practice and by the things that people do or refuse to do. But there is a debate going on, and the debate centers around about 5 questions. And the questions are, who is in charge? Who is in charge of this church? And I know it's easy to say, well, Jesus is, but what if you get together as a church and you got to decide when you're going to have the services and what songs to sing and what kind of teaching happens on Sunday and how we do outreaches, and if we do outreaches, what kind of events we do, how we format our discipleship, and all of that stuff becomes a question. And yeah, Jesus is in charge, but this person thinks that Jesus wants it this way, and this person thinks Jesus wants it this way. Well, who makes the decision then? Because obviously Jesus isn't calling 2 directions, and so who is in charge? Who is the one under Jesus that makes the decisions? Is it one person? Is it a group of people? Who are those people? That's been a large question that's been asked from the start of the church back in Jesus's day or at the day of Pentecost, whenever you consider the beginning of the church age. Second question is, how do we organize? And I alluded to some of that. How do we organize ourselves? What kind of accountability do we have going? How do we run things? Are we a collection of churches, independent churches? How do we get organized? Do we organize as believers? That's some people say, well, I'm not into organized religion and those kind of things, and I'm independent and all that stuff, and that's fine too, but that's still a position, and that position is to not organize. And so all of that sits there going through church history. How do we organize? Thirdly, how do we practice our faith or our mission Or what do we do in our gatherings? So what is it we're trying to achieve? What is it we're doing? And how are we going to go about doing those things? And there's been a lot of disagreement throughout church history on the answer to that question. Fourth question is, what do we believe? What is our doctrine? What is our teaching? What is our theology? What do we believe? And we might just simply say, well, I believe the Bible. That's true, but when has there ever been a scenario where everybody who believes in the Bible believes the same thing about what the Bible says? So that becomes a reoccurring theme. You think of like the Reformation, that was a conflict with what do we believe? And also, who is in charge as well? But what do we believe? The Roman Catholic Church believed a certain direction. Martin Luther believed a different direction. He began to lead people out of that because there was a debate on what do we believe. The fifth question is, how do we live? Or what is the standard of morality? And that's intensely debated now in this culture. And that is a part of what we're looking at is, what are we allowed to do? What is expected of us when it comes to behavior? So those 5 questions, we will see as we journey through church history, those 5 questions are at the heart of everything that surfaces. There are also who do we want to look at as we walk through church history? Again, I know it's about Jesus. I know it's about God. But God is working through individuals, and we see what God is doing through individuals. That's why even in the Bible we have Moses, we have Abraham, we have the patriarchs in general, we have Job, we have David, we have Solomon, we have Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel, and we have Elijah and Elisha, and we have John the Baptist, and we have Jesus, and we have Paul and Peter and John and Mark and Luke and all these different individuals, James, and so God's always working through people, and the way we discover what God is doing is often through people. And so who are the people? Who are the players in church history? And there are 3 basic categories, and there's good and bad to this. The people that claim to be Christians as individuals, and in groups as well, but as individuals. And it's important to know that because there are a number of people today that believe that Christianity is either false or not good because of the behavior of Christians, assuming that means that every person who claims to be a Christian is defining what Christianity is. And that's really scary when you think about it. So again, anybody could just say, I'm a Christian, and all of a sudden start defining what Christianity is. And so we have to recognize that plays a major factor in what's happening in the church, in church history, why things are that way, and why we're believing and doing some of the stuff we're doing, because every single person that claims to be a follower of Christ is impacting this picture. A second group of people are those who are involved in organized hierarchy, to the lowest level of the local pastor, priest, minister, of a local church. That individual carries some weight just because of the title, to moving up to presbyters, bishops, and cardinals and popes and superintendents and whatever titles that people have in various denominations. These individuals throughout church history have made a major influence on the direction of the church. Now, not every time that someone has a title do they carry influence. Are they followed? Do they have a positive or even a negative impact? And so just because a person has a title doesn't mean they become significant in church history. And that's why you have the third category of individuals, and that's influencers. People who made a major impact on the way Christians view things and the way Christians practice their faith and the way Christianity is viewed in the world. And there are influencers certainly that exist within those titles, those offices, but there are also plenty of individuals that exist outside of those offices. One person that might be big to consider would be like Billy Graham, for example. Even though he did work in various ministry title roles, at some point he was leading a parachurch evangelistic ministry outreach, and he didn't have really an official inside the church, inside a denomination title. And there are influencers like that throughout church history. And when we think about the beliefs that we have, a lot of times the beliefs we have, many times the beliefs we have as Christians, they might be biblical. So I'm not saying they're not biblical, but they are often tied to the teaching of some individual or group of individuals in the past. And it's important to know that so we can know how to evaluate that and know how to respond to other people who hold the same or different views. Some additional questions, maybe subcategory questions that might surface as we or you work through church history would be, what is the authoritative Bible? For example, some believe King James is the only correct translation of the Bible. So what is the correct translation of the Bible? How do we view the Bible? Maybe secondly, what is the correct interpretation of the Bible? So maybe we agree on the translation, but we don't agree on how to interpret and apply the Bible. What portions of it are figurative and literal? These are questions that aren't only modern issues. They've been asked centuries and centuries in the past. And then lastly, what is the legitimate church or Christian? That consistently is a question throughout church history. It leads to many conflicts. It leads to what splits into different denominations and such. And so as time allows, we will proceed into walking through piece by piece the history of the Christian church. So I hope that helps. Please leave a question or a comment below. If you have any questions, I'd love to respond to them. And again, if there's something you want to see, you can leave that in the comment as well. A question you have about the format, and we'll keep working through those things. But if you live in the Pittsburgh area and you would like to grow further in your faith in person, then join us at Bethel Assembly of God, 2501 Staten Street, Wednesdays at 6:30 and Sundays at 10 a.m. God bless.